going through a massive transition in the economy right now,
right?
Where you can make millions of dollars in very ways that the older generations, even me and you, would look at and say, that's not a legitimate way to make money, but yet it's dollars are dollars.
Welcome to another episode of the Founder Podcast. Today, I am joined by Mr. Bridger Pennington. Right? I'm pronouncing it right. Oh, man. But Bridger is an absolute stud. He has been running his business, Fund Launch, in which they teach entrepreneurs how to launch funds, which is super exciting. It's actually something I'm actually really excited to learn more about. He sold an additional business, got his start in the business years ago when he found out that his dad was actually wealthy. Grew up in a way that didn't realize that. His dad runs a real estate fund, number 5 in the world, 48 billion. And your dad never gave you any money, never gave you anything, but he gave you the knowledge in order to do so, which I think is the best thing that you can pass on to future generations. Bridger's a family man, a believer in Christ, and just an awesome dude. Welcome to the show.
Chris, good to be on. What a pleasure.
Yeah,
it's
dude.
Awesome to be on, dude.
Excited. You know, it's interesting, Bridger. So I'm always looking for awesome guests for my podcast, and I got the recommendation to interview you by like 3 or 4 different people. They're like, you got to interview Bridger. You got to interview Bridger. And so like after the 3rd, 4th, I'm like, all right, this guy must be legit. Let's reach out, figure it out. So excited to have you on, man. So give us more depth in that story. So first of all, how old are you? You're a young man.
Yeah. So 28 years old right now.
So awesome.
Yeah, we're running that hedge fund, and we got Fund Launch, which is cool, and we're just growing. So we've helped, I think, we have about 60,000 students around the world that do funds. So and we can dive into funds. We've got 12 funds over $100 million, 1 fund over $1 billion. We're partners now on 8 minority funds as well. So these funds, we can go dive into it. Craziest funds you've ever seen. I mean, basic hedge funds, real estate funds, private equity, but also we have guys doing almond farm funds. We have guys doing cow manure funds. We have
dope.
One group, they find broke writers on Hollywood. They buy scripts from them. They turn around and sell them to HBO, Netflix for like 200, 300 grand. So they make a spread.
Oh my gosh,
that's their
I need
entire
to do
fund.
that.
Anyways, we help a lot of people launch funds, which is pretty cool.
I love the hustle. Sorry if I didn't if I downplayed your profile, because you're freaking awesome.
Well, no, it's fun. I like to just seed kind of this stuff because it's such an interesting space that not a lot of people talk about.
Yeah.
Like the reason we actually started making content online was because no one teaches this.
Yes.
And I was thankful enough to learn from a dad
who
taught me this. But like literally, if you go on Google or YouTube, this is like locked up on Wall Street or on Ivy League Tower or whatever somewhere. Regular people like me and you don't hear about this every single day. And so we're like, we need to we call it democratize Wall Street. So cool. Bring this to the general public and people. It's a pretty cool space.
Yeah, I love your hashtag. It's like Wall Street Rebels or something. What is it? Yeah, that's so cool. Man, so tell us the story, like how you got involved, like growing up, your dad was running these funds. You really didn't know. Like, give me that whole background.
Yeah, and cut me off whenever you want.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a pretty normal house. My dad drove a car with a dent in the door.
I mean, what are we talking normal house?
Like nothing. I wasn't poor by any means.
How many square feet?
Probably 3,000 square feet. 3,500 square feet.
Normal house.
My dad drove a 1999 Ford Expedition with literally a dent in the door.
Yes.
And just an entrepreneur. He was up and down. He started a bunch of different companies. Cool. Really awesome dude. But he grew up in ghetto North Las Vegas, very poor. So he had risen from his income to where he was at the time, but nothing, fancy. We didn't go on trips. We didn't we're there, and it was fun. I had a great childhood.
No Ferraris, no Lambos.
So he really baked into us kids though, this entrepreneur spirit. Like if you want to do well, and it was interesting. My dad made sure, one of his stories is like, I made sure my kids lived nearby rich kids. So he bought the cheapest house that went to the same schools as all the rich kids.
So cool.
Because he goes, I think most kids believe they can do what their dad does. Right. He goes, I grew up in a high school in North Las Vegas where the kids' parents were just blue collar workers, and you'd ask the kid, I'm not going to college. I'm going to go work at the tire store.
Right.
I'm going to go work at the fire department, which is nothing wrong with that. Because I want my kids to hang out with kids whose parents are anesthesiologists or which all my friends, ears, nose, and throat, went to school for 15 years, doctor, right? They live in this huge mansion. Another guy was a major big time lawyer. The other guy that he's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Wow.
I was friends with these guys. And so their kids, you'd ask them, what are you guys going to do? Well, I'm going to do what my dad did. I'm going to go to college, go to Wharton, go to Harvard. And what it does is everyone believes that they can do what their dad does typically.
Right.
And so he did that on purpose, actually, to make sure I grew up with those kids. So I had, anyways, a very strong entrepreneur spirit.
Very cool.
Went on a 2-year LDS mission, went to Taiwan, spoke Mandarin Chinese.
Wow.
Loved it. We can talk about that more if you want, but it was an amazing mission. Came home and I was came home on fire.
Yes.
Like, I am here. I'm ready to work. So the first week I got home, I started a business. I started a Chinese tutoring business.
Yes.
I started tutoring kids in my neighborhood and stuff. I was making $30 to $40 an hour tutoring. I then hired 7 or 8 tutors. We started to build this little group. And I realized the thing, though, when I was doing this business, that the margins are terrible on tutoring because I had to pay if I hired a kid to help me tutor.
Right.
If we made $30, I'd pay him $25. I was making a $5 margin, which just isn't much, right?
No.
So anyways, a long story, but my first 2 years of college, I started 6 businesses.
Yes.
And these weren't just like business ideas. Like, these were actual businesses. I wholesaled 2 houses. We started building websites for people. I was doing this Chinese tutoring business. I mean, I did like every business on YouTube I figured out and did.
Yes.
And finally my dad grabs me and he's like,
just the hustle is what you were
It was
after.
just the hustle. And I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And
Yep.
and actually that taught me a ton. We can talk about it in a minute, but just the process of doing that teaches you a ton. My dad finally grabs me though. And he goes, Bridger, you're kind of like a chicken with your head cut off. I want you to go meet with my business partner. This guy can really help you out. So I said, okay, Dad, I'll do whatever. So I go meet with this guy. I pull up to his house, beautiful house, gated community, beautiful, gorgeous home. I park my car and I'm like, who's my dad's business partner?
Jeez,
this guy's legit. So I walk up to the door, I knock on the door. I'm a little nervous, like a butler's gonna come and like, be gone, peasant, get out of here, you know? But anyways, my dad's business partner answers the door, goes, Bridger, come on in. I walk in this guy's house. It's gorgeous. He's got the cars, the pool, just everything, right? I'm totally impressed. I sit down, we have this long conversation. I finally ask him though, I go, how did you get all of this? How did you do this? And he goes, Bridger, it's a funny question. Not a lot of people ask me this. And he goes, in my 20s, I was a lot like you. He goes, I was a hustler. I just did every business. And actually, I made good money in my 20s. But then he goes, then I figured out the secrets of the ultra wealthy. He goes, the ultra wealthy families of the world, they send their children to the best universities possible. And they sometimes cheat to get them in or pay to get, we've seen that in the news, right?
Yeah.
But they go and they want their kids to work in the fund space, private equity, hedge funds, venture capital, or come back home and run the family office.
Yeah.
And he goes, I've met a guy that ran a private equity fund that was one of the most wealthy people I'd ever met, as a young dude. And he said, I met that guy and I made a goal. He says, I don't care how long it takes me, 1 year, 5 years, or 20 years. He goes, I was going to figure out what a fund was. He goes, I don't even know what a fund was, how to build one, and how to scale one. And he goes, that's what we did. And he goes, and at the time, he goes, we're managing about $8 billion of real estate, multifamily, which, to put that into perspective, I know, Grant Cardone, people will follow him. Cardone Capital is about $4 billion.
Right. This is double.
So that's 2 times. This is years ago.
And this was, wow. Yeah.
This is twice, and they're buying multifamily apartments, pretty similar asset class,
Right.
twice as big as Cardone Capital. Today, they're over 10 times bigger than Cardone Capital.
Wild.
So 10x Uncle G. Nothing wrong with Uncle G. I love his content, but just to give you a magnitude of scale.
Yeah.
That's a lot
That's big
growth.
perspective. Yeah.
And I was totally impressed. And I saw it, and I was just a young kid. I'm 21 at the time. And I was like, can you be my mentor? I'll come, I'll get you coffee, whatever. He goes, Bridger, go talk to your dad. Your dad knows way more about this than I do. And I said, no, my dad's kind of broke. We live in a normal house. Dude, I want to learn from you. Like, you're rich, you're all this stuff. And he goes, Bridger, sorry to break it to you, but
your dad's rich.
Yeah, me and your dad make about the same amount of money.
We're 50-50 on this thing.
And my chin drops to the floor. I was like, huh? Like, come again? He's like, yeah, we're pretty much equal business partners. And I left the dude's house. I drove straight to my dad's house.
You're like, what on earth?
What's going on, Dad?
This is after you came home off your mission.
Yes, this is after.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, Dad, what's going on? Like, what? Like, why haven't I been able to order like dessert at the restaurant for the past 20 years? Because it's too expensive. We got to save money on drinks, and yet you're managing billions of dollars. So long story short, my dad started to teach me about funds. So every Sunday night I go to his house, he pulled out the whiteboard, and he would map out what funds were, how waterfall structures work, how international feeder strings work, how the SEC compliance works, how to find capital partners, all this stuff. And it was phenomenal. And I had this just master class from my dad, a mentor on funds. And it's a funny thing about life, when you start to learn something, you start to recognize that thing in your life. Principle from Tony Robbins, all these other teachers, like if you buy a car, you start to see that car everywhere, right?
Right.
Same thing was true with me about funds. I started to learn about funds, and I thought, I started to see opportunities for funds. So I turned 22 years old. I was in college working. So I was in school full time, working a job and an internship. Again, my dad I was working too. I was working college and doing my thing. At the internship, I saw an opportunity where we could start a fund for this company. They needed financing for these clients. So I said, I'm going to do this fund. I put it all together. Me and my dad helped put this kind of map out what the fund would look like. And I finally hit this wall. So I built this whole thing. I was super excited. Then I hit this wall like, crap, how am I going to raise money? Like the first thing you need for a fund is investors.
Right.
Like that's the basis of a fund. Like I haven't graduated college. I have no track record, no Ivy League degree. Like who's going to invest in me? And then I had a great idea. I was like, my dad.
He's got money.
Like, he doesn't spend it on Ferraris or fun stuff. Like my dad will invest, and he's already helped me build this little thing. So I remember it was a late Sunday night. I went in my dad's little home office, and I walked in his room.
You had your pitch ready.
Oh yeah, I'm ready to go.
Oh baby.
And I sit across my dad just like this. And I said, Dad, how would you like to be our first investor into our fund? And he smiled and he said, Bridger, I have the money to invest, but if I invest in your fund, it would ruin the experience of you raising money on your own. This will be a crutch that you'll never be able to recover from. And your first investor is your hardest investor to find, so no. And he kicked me out. I was like, yeah, tough love moment between me and my dad. But then but it was probably the greatest blessing my dad ever gave me.
Absolutely.
And I went out and I raised a whopping $49,500 from 6 investors, which is, people listening, that might sound cool. That's teeny. That's like nothing in the fund space.
So were you doing it all legal? Were these all accredited investors?
So we did it through a syndication structure. And I believe some were accredited, some weren't, but we were all partners on a syndication essentially.
Yeah.
And so we had all the lawyers check it off and it looked good. And so we launched this little micro syndication. And it was a teeny amount of money, but we did really well. We got a 64% return on their money back to those first group of partners, investors, which was phenomenal.
On 50 grand.
Yeah,
let's go.
I know. We then dovetailed that into our second fund. Our second fund, we raised and deployed millions of dollars out of that fund. I ran that fund for about 3.5 years, did incredible. We had I think 62, 49, and 36% cash on cash return.
So real quick, you go and you return 64%. Your next guys you're going to raise money from, are you telling them, hey, our previous fund was only 50 grand, or you're saying our previous fund returned 64%?
64% sounds a lot better, yeah. And we just said, hey, we're doing the same strategy. We're just going to do it at scale. And we were doing micro loans. They were $2,000, $8,000 a loan. They turned very fast. We just got this great return. And that fund did phenomenal. It was great. I actually finally had a competitor come and buy us out on that fund. So they gave us an offer. We sold that fund and exited that. And then during that process, my dad and myself, my brother is also an investment funds attorney. Worked at the largest law firm in the world for funds. And so between the three of us, we had a pretty good fund knowledge. So we started to make content online, and then we made a kind of a course and a group.
You said your dad was involved with the content.
Well, I would just interview him.
Right.
I was pretty much me, but I'd interview him and bring him as a guest sometimes. My brother, I'd bring him as a guest. But it was pretty much me.
Yeah.
And all this, we just blew up online as far as the space. And it's pretty niche space for funds, but we now, have grown and we throw big events and we do all this cool stuff. And we have students all over the world and people launching crazy funds. And
so amazing.
And then since then, I've launched now a different hedge fund. We raised 8 figures on our first launch and we're running that. Now it's a crypto hedge fund we currently run. And then now we partner with some of our students. We partner with 8 of them on some of their funds. So yeah, it's kind of that's the quick and dirty story.
Yeah, you said so. Like kind of your portfolio of students. You said how many have done 100 million and you have one that's done $1 billion, right?
Yep.
Raised a fund. So
12 funds over 100 million, or at least reported. This is just reported.
Right.
One fund over $1 billion. We have 54 funds over $10 million in our group.
Dude, that's crazy. So exciting. Yeah. And so I mean, here you are, 28 years old, 7 years since you've come home from your mission.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, just about. Yeah.
Okay. Married, have a kid, right? Living life. Man, you know where I was when I was 28 years old? I think I was just meddling through bankruptcy. I can't remember.
Oh, shoot.
But it was about the same. So that's pretty awesome that you've been able to take this. I love your dad's perspective on like not giving your kids a crutch.
Yeah.
I have the same.
And still to this day, my dad has not invested in any fund or deal I've pitched him.
That's so awesome.
I pitch him all the time too.
I love that.
I'm like, Dad, there's this great deal. He's like, cool, find somebody else.
I need to meet your dad.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
Because I actually try to father very similarly with my kids. So I have 5 kids. My oldest boy is 14. My daughter's 16. And the thing I let them know, I'm like, look, you don't get a dime, right? Like when you're under my home, I'm going to provide some basic essentials and everything for you, but I'm not investing in your business. You're not, when I die, you're not inheriting anything. Yeah. But the best thing I can do is give you my knowledge. So it sounds like me and your dad.
That's and my dad has done that for me, and it's been phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I interview a lot of people that run funds, big funds that are wealthy, and it's funny to interview them and see the difference between, and I in my opinion, about 50-50 of the kids of the second generation of these really high powered fund managers or people that have tons of wealth. About 50-50, half of them, the kids totally go astray. Yeah. And are on drugs and just suck money out of it. And then the other half, these parents do a really good job. And most parents that I've seen do that exact thing.
Oh, so
they make their kids.
Those are the ones that are successful.
Yes.
Let's go.
And I'll echo what you're saying. I think I want to parent my kids that way. Kind of like Shaq said. Right?
Yeah.
I'm rich.
I'm rich.
We're not rich.
Get out of
I love
here.
that one.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm part of a Harvard group. So I attend this program called OPM. And have you heard of it?
No.
Yeah. So essentially what it is it's every year we go out to Harvard 3 weeks a year, stay on campus. It's for owners, presidents of different businesses.
Yep.
And they have certain qualifications. There's 168 of us.
Yep.
And it's got a diverse people. I mean, we've got the second richest guy in the world. His oldest son is part of our group. We've got Will.i.am. We got like there's all kinds of like super successful, this, that, and the other. But it's interesting. You take that sample size of 168 people, and you got about half of them that are living on daddy's money, right? And you just see what they're doing with their lives. And some of them are just like not that impressive. And then there's these other people that have like bootstrapped it up, or their parents taught them the right way or whatnot. And so yeah, it's never even a distinguish of whether or not your parent was rich. It was how they
parented,
how they transitioned that wealth of knowledge, right? But did they transition just assets or wealth or knowledge assets, right?
What's funny, we go and meet with a lot of big family offices.
Yeah.
And that exact same thing, you see a big level of confidence shift between those two categories as well.
Yes.
People that bootstrap like you or me or whatever,
right.
like they feel this big amount of pride and confidence in what they've built.
Right.
The other half feel this sense of, you know what, I was kind of gifted this stuff. And we go meet with these, and my business partner kept telling me, he goes, Bridger, when we're going to meet with this family, you're going to notice the kid, because we're meeting with the son, there's a deep sense of sadness behind their eyes.
Yes.
There's a deep sense of, you know, dad did it, but I haven't quite done it yet.
Right.
Behind their eyes.
And they're still trying to prove to their dad that they're worth it, but they never can because they're not actually doing it, right?
And they're 40, 50-year-old men.
Yes, it's
still
crazy.
feeling like they haven't proved anything. And then all of a sudden they'll come up, well, we're going to do this charity thing and do $12 million to this random thing. And it just doesn't quite fill that void because they were given it. And it's funny, if you think about, you know, if you were God or the creator of the universe and you were trying to build a amazing human,
right?
You wouldn't give them everything up front. If you wanted to build patience, you wouldn't give them everything day one. If you wanted to build perseverance or diligence, you would give them the opposite of what you think to build that trait.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most beautiful gifts parents can give to children, I think, is not giving them money, not giving them a hand up, but giving them maybe knowledge, maybe delaying, whatever the thing is for your child. But it's a very interesting way to think about life.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So my business partner, Daryl, he's got 4 daughters, and we kind of have this debate back and forth because, you know, daughters and sons are even a little different, right? Because the expectation for a man, like at least where my expectation is, a man needs to go and provide, right? A woman needs to support. Yeah, she may be a part of the providing, right? But it's a different level. And so like, how do you allocate that, right? Like, do I take care of my daughters but not my sons, or you know, it's a interesting, healthy debate to like figure out how that.
What have you done with your daughters then?
You know, right now I try to parent them the same, but it doesn't work very good. I'm not, to be frank, I'm not a great dad of girls, right? Like I am very like rigid, like rub some dirt in it, you know, stand up, you got this type deal. Doesn't work with women, you know, and so I've tried to morph my parenting style or whatnot, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I think I'll probably have a different take on a financial aspect with the way I take care of my daughters, but it'll be interesting. But at the same time, I don't want to debilitate my future son-in-laws, right? Like, and so.
That's such an interesting category too. The son-in-laws coming in, and
man,
it's very interesting.
Good night. Yeah, I'm gonna.
Good night.
Oh man, I'm gonna be approaching that here in a few years. My daughter's she's 16 and a half. You know, she's gonna be gone in 2 years. I mean, she could be married in 3 or 4. I'm like,
how do you approach that?
Wow.
It's funny too. I love the quote: "Everyone's a perfect parent until they have kids." Right. And so it's just interesting as you go. It's cute. A couple of years I have to follow up and see how you navigate all that.
Yeah. I have some really cool things that I like to do with my kids that have seemed to work thus far, but we'll see. So, man, I love what your story, like that is fascinating to me, like the way that your dad is passing on his knowledge and just your hustle, your grit, all these different businesses that you've started. I think that's so key to being successful, is like just finding the different ins and outs of like creating value, right? And even if it's only $5 an hour of value that you're creating versus like flipping a big business or whatever it is, like I think that's so much of the younger generation today is just trying to get the quick and easy buck, right? They're thinking like, I think the statistic, right? They interviewed a bunch of teenagers and like all of them expect to be a millionaire by the age of 25, right? Yeah. But they want it quick and easy. They're not willing to go and do those things, build a language, building, business where you're only making $5 an hour, or, figure out how the economy works or whatever it is, right? Like, it's just like, I want it now, start a YouTube channel, get a following, shake my butt, we do something, I don't know. And so it's interesting to just see like that you're doing it the right way.
Well, it's interesting too. I actually love that goal though. I love that that's built in. If a lot of kids want to be, I love the Jim Rohn quote, set a goal to be a millionaire, right? Because of who you have to become to get there.
Right.
And we're going through a massive transition in the economy right now. Right. Where you can make millions of dollars in very ways that the older generations, even me and you, would look at and say, that's not a legitimate way to make money, but yet it's dollars are dollars. Right. And so whether it's a YouTube channel or being a content creator or I don't know, building an AI, just leveraging AI to build websites or whatever you're going to use, at least the journey I think is massive. Now I have friends that are, giving everything up to be a gaming streamer, right? And they're not putting correct business principles into what they're going to do, especially for online creation. This is something actually I did a terrible job at the beginning. I had we actually built a course to flip houses. Okay. This is like way back when one of those 6 businesses was a course called Live Flip. Yeah. And so I was like, I love the concept of courses. They have great margins, you can do a lot with a course. Let's build a house flipping course. So I found these 2 mentors. I brought them in. We filmed for like 8 months, them flipping a house. And it was actually very high quality. Shot it in 4K, edited it. We made this big thing. I was decent at marketing. We built the funnels. We did the webinars. We did the whole model. We copied the whole thing. We launched it and it totally flopped. And I looked back and I was like, why? We have a great product and online, and why don't people just sign up? And then I realized that a certain thing that we don't think about when we go to online, when we're starting a podcast or starting a YouTube channel. If you were going to open up a coffee shop, right, in your local area, you probably wouldn't put it next to the 5. There's 5 other coffee shops on one corner. You probably wouldn't put a 6th there. Right. It's just a very competitive market. Right. Maybe you put it in an area where there's not a lot of coffee shops, whatever. You'd be strategic about your location of a business. Yet online, I realized with a house flipping course, there's about 1,000 house flipping courses. There's Dean Graciosa. You can name them off. Right. Why would they choose us over there? I was like, this is a red ocean. Right. I have a friend right now. He's like, Bridger, I'm going to be a fitness influencer. And I was like, okay. Like what niche or whatever. No, I'm just going to post videos of doing fitness. Just crush it. You and 20,000 other people are doing the exact same content online. It's just funny. We don't think about this red ocean, blue ocean concept. Right. And it was funny enough when we started Fun Launch, we take a totally different approach. I used a tool called TubeBuddy. Fantastic tool. Everyone should use it. It's a Chrome extension. It goes on YouTube. What's it called? TubeBuddy. How do you spell that? Like YouTube Buddy. Okay. Tube, T-U-B-E, Buddy. Yep. You go on there and you can actually type in keywords and phrases and it'll say how much search volume versus how much competition is for that key phrase. So we went on there and I said like how to flip a house. A lot of people search that, but very competitive. Yes. We went and searched like how to start a private equity fund. Very high search volume, low competition. Wow. And we're like, that's interesting. Yes. How to start a real estate fund or how to start a private equity or how do I like raise capital for a fund? We started getting these incredible, ton of people searching for it, very low competition. We thought, this might be a blue ocean online. Right. And so actually my first episodes, I started a podcast and show, the first episodes, all 10 of them were pretty much targeted directly for those keywords. And all of a sudden I think we did $1 million in our first 6 months. We did 2.5 million in our first 12 months. Wow. Because we picked a niche and found a blue ocean that was already there online. But a lot of people when they're looking online don't realize these red oceans. So I have friends that want to be a gaming streamer. Okay, cool. That's great. You and 10,000 other people. So maybe you should be a streamer that wears a certain outfit or does something funny or cracks jokes or maybe a comedian and a streamer at the same time. Yes. Finding your niche on the online scape is a very different thing than just starting. Right. Right. Yeah. A lot of people think if I just take action, if I just create a product or whatnot, it's going to automatically sell. Right. And so it's understanding the total addressable market. It's understanding the competition. It's understanding, can I sell it? Right? Before you ever even get into the right? Like creating all the content. Because otherwise, I mean, there's so many just market positioning.
Yes.
It's like massive.
Yes.
I have a friend that does online fitness, but he's online fitness for successful CEOs ages 45 to 55.
Money.
All of a sudden, he's the category king of that space.
Yes.
And everyone comes to him for that thing.
Right.
It's really cool. I have another friend that does online fitness for brides. She calls it Bride Fit. It's actually a family member of ours.
Get your naked body on. Let's go.
Well, it's like, yeah, you've got 6 months till you're getting married.
Yes.
Let's do a 6-month program to get you bride fit for your fit in that wedding dress. And women, especially when they're getting married, there's just, and as a husband, you just spend a lot of money. It's like, yeah, flowers, whatever. Yeah, bride fit's like $5, whatever, how many grand it is. Yeah,
put it in the budget, baby.
Yeah, it's all in the budget because and she's actually built an incredible business off of that little niche.
That's so cool. So, dude, what drives you today? So, like, you're building this. Like, where do you want to take it? Like, what are your goals? What are your aspirations right now?
So it's funny. I'll talk through on a couple different senses here. Obviously, with Fund Launch and our funds, at first I was like, I need to make money. Bridger, and I was all focused on money, very coin focused. And so we made money. I made sure we were cash flow generating, was putting in my pocket, which was awesome. And I did that for a while. And it was really great. I'm hitting a point now where I'm transitioning from that to now more impact. And it was really frustrating, actually. I listen to podcasts like this and I listen to founders and I'm like, yeah, dude, we're all about the mission and the impact. And I thought it was really cheesy.
You're like, bull crap.
Yeah, everyone says that once they're a billionaire. Right. But what were you doing when you were like making your first 10 grand? You were focusing on making money. And so I focused on making money for the first, I don't know, let's call it a couple of years.
Yep.
I'm now hitting a point where I feel like I've made enough money where it actually, now I understand why people talk about impact and what they're doing. And now I've really focused on our customers and clients. Like I really do want to change this democratization of Wall Street. I think there's consolidation at Vanguard, at BlackRock, these big Citadel that run the world.
Yeah.
You can talk at length, but how they manage all the boards and they do ESG initiatives and all these initiatives to change Disney and Fox and all these companies. They pretty much have 100% say on what happens.
Right.
They can do that because they run a fund.
Right.
And 150 years ago, however many years ago, they figured out this game and just took it to the nth degree.
Yep.
I think more people like us need to figure out this game. We need to democratize the game of funds. So it's not just 1 in 7 homes in 2021 were purchased by Wall Street.
Wild.
In 2022, it was 1 in 5.
Wow.
Residential homes were purchased by funds. More people need to understand this game of funds, or we're going to be slaves to people that understand the game of funds.
Yeah. So you talk about like finding your motivation. Obviously, like initially it was money, and then you're kind of going more to like a cause and taking it to like being able to push it, through funds, right?
Yep.
Have you ever read the book How We Measure Your Life?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yep. So I believe it's from that book where he talks about like the hygiene factors. Have you heard, you remember this? Yeah. So it's interesting because money and oxygen are both hygiene factors, right? When you don't have enough of it, right? Your first 10 grand, your first 100 grand, whatever it is, right? Just paying your bills. It's the only thing that can motivate. It's the only thing you can think about. I need oxygen now.
Yep.
But after that, and you don't even have to be that wealthy, right? Like you don't have to have that. Money will lose its savor, right? Money will lose its drive, its power, everything like that. It is finding these bigger purpose things that actually are your true motivational factors that push you. And the craziest thing that most people don't realize when they're poor is that if I could just focus on my motivational factors, I will be a value creator and money will automatically just attract itself to me, right? Instead of me chasing money, money starts chasing me.
Yep.
And so I just love that just that concept of like shifting, right? Even though it sounds cheesy, like you said, right? Like, oh yeah, sure, purpose-driven life, whatever else, like bull.
Add value to the world, and I was like, yeah, that's cool, but like I need to make 10 grand right now. I need to survive the next 6 months. And that was actually good for a season. I'm happy I did that.
Right.
But it's transitioned a lot. And the other thing I'll say is this. I'll tell you a quick story. So we were at Pirates Cove, actually. I think I texted you. I was there.
Yep.
With my wife's family.
Cool.
And my wife's grandparents, he's got an incredible story. He grew up, his mom was a prostitute, had all these different fathers through his life. He grew up in a very interesting circumstance.
This is your wife's who?
It's my wife's grandpa.
Okay.
He then grows up. He beats his father up when he's 14. He got really good at boxing. Beats the crap out of his father when he's drunk one night and like leaves the house and has this crazy story. He then becomes a blackjack dealer. He's pretty good at football. He gets a scholarship to go.
This is down in Vegas or where?
This is he was in through California, kind of Vegas area. He then plays for a team in Utah, college team. He then gets called to Vietnam, serves in Vietnam, finds God, finds Christ, becomes a member of the Church of Jesus Christ, gets baptized, changes his life, gets married. He becomes a very successful lawyer. He has 5 kids. Those kids all have incredible people. And my wife is one of his granddaughters.
That's awesome.
And they are, I'm not even kidding when I say incredible humans, this family. pretty much everyone is like incredible in like either dance or sport. They're college athletes or they're ripped, like, or they have incredible businesses. Every single person you see is like, wow, these are sharp people.
You married up.
I married up big time.
Yeah, that's good.
So we're there, and it was funny. This guy comes and he visits the family. He walks, he's looking at this guy's a multimillionaire, kind of been a playboy through his life, but now he's a little bit older. He's like 50-ish.
Yeah.
And he's there and he's like, huh. He talks to the grandpa and we're kind of sitting there and he goes, what you have here is really special. Yeah. Money can't buy this.
Yeah.
You've built a family legacy. And me and my wife talk about this a lot. When I interview people and talk about success and family and whatever, I think the biggest success in life is exactly what my wife's grandpa has, where you have compounded wealth, or how you ever define wealth, but success through generations. Because I think, and you can't buy that. And you can't even do it yourself.
Right.
You have to do it with another human, your spouse.
Yep.
And it takes 35, 40 years of being a really good dad and mother, and then a really good grandfather to have. He's got about 60, 70 people in his posterity.
So cool.
And not a single one of them, they're all amazing people.
That is amazing.
Almost all of them. And it's just cool. And like, you can't buy that.
That is so cool. Like Ed Milet refers to it, to her grandfather as the one, right? He's generational breaker, right? My dad was the same thing for us, right? Like my dad grew up in a home of a drunkard. You know, he was driving his dad home from bars at age 12, you know, late at night or whatnot. And it's just so cool to see the impact that someone, like, just one decision, right? I'm going to be different. I'm going to change it, and to have it spread across generations, dude, that's so awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. How does your family help you offer perspective on your business?
Well, it's massive. I think about that all the time, that family legacy. And I think on my business side of things, I have a unique spot for my business where I actually have thousands of students that look to me for help and my team and stuff. Right. And I can hopefully drastically affect their lives in a positive way in a world of finance where it's the Wolf of Wall Street lifestyle, like cocaine, stripper, just do whatever, live life fast, and who cares what happens tomorrow.
Yes.
And when clients meet with me and my team, it's usually different. A very stark difference. I'm like, dude, we're playing the long game here. We're playing the 40-year game of reputation. You got to build a great family alongside a great business that has integrity, that builds with investors and clients throughout, the next few decades. Yeah. And they're like, oh, I thought you were just some 28-year-old whatever. And I'm like, no, this is what we're building here. Right. And it's just compounded years of being a really good human, like, especially for funds. That's really what funds are. Right. When you compound funds, you look at these big fund managers, Ray Dalio, Warren Buffett. Right. Ray Dalio started his first fund at 26 years old. Wow. Warren Buffett started his first fund at, I believe, 28. A bunch of these fund managers today that are multi-billion-dollar fund managers started in their 20s at a pretty small fund. They raised 50 to 100 grand and it just started. And over a decade and a couple of decades, they get compounded returns. They were honest with investors, whether they made money or lost money. They had audits done. And all of a sudden we go, man, Warren Buffett's just incredible, or Ray Dalio's incredible. It's like, well, look, he spent 50 years. Right. Have you ever 50 years doing this?
Have you ever seen his hockey stick growth of his net worth? It's actually phenomenal. You can Google it, right? I'd encourage audience one not to do so, but it literally shows just like how unimpressive it was in his 20s, in his 30s, even in his 40s. It wasn't even that. It was a lot of money, but it wasn't a lot of money, right? And then it just, this compound effect, and just, into his 70s, all of a sudden it's just like, boom, double, right? And it just, the consistency, like you said, like the honesty with your investors, like sticking to it, that's awesome.
And back to what you talked about, kids want to all be quick, get rich quick, which is fine. I like that mentality, but there's something about living a life and leaving a long-term legacy and having compounded wins over time, and understanding that some things just take time when you're being diligent and perseverant. So I think it's phenomenal, especially in the fund game.
Yeah, dude. And what you're really talking about is creating a culture, right? Like your team, not only is your employees, but it's this group of students, right? Like you have such a powerful influence, and when you have that kind of influence, it's all driven by culture. And it's like, what is our mission statement? What are our core values? Those things matter, right? Like as I built an organization of 1,300 employees, like it was all based off of those things. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing. And like, that's the power to change the world. That's the power to influence it and to go and compete against these big funds that are literally just dictating how we live life, like we have the power to fight back. I love it.
Oh, I love it. 6 months ago, we did a whole executive retreat, my team. We built out, it took us about, I think 12 to 15 hours to build our core values.
Yeah.
And we put them on the wall and they look simple, but it's like we debated these heavily.
Love it.
About what we're going to live by and die by as a team. And it's been actually phenomenal for our company.
That's so awesome. So dude, you're still young, right? Like a lot of times when I meet with somebody, it's like, okay, what advice would you give to a young entrepreneur? You're still young yourself, but like, one, would you change anything that you've done up until this point? And then two, what advice would you give to somebody that's contemplating leaving everything they have and going out on their own?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the first question, I don't know if I have a ton. It's always like, you got to look back at your life and say, I'm happy with the way things turned out, good, bad, or ugly, because it's made me who I am today.
Yep.
I mean, if I could go back, I'd buy Bitcoin in 2012 or something, right? You do something like that. But I'll give advice to a younger self. And it's actually fun. I speak at, I oftentimes actually get invited to speak at colleges and universities to high school kids because I'm just closer to their age.
Yes.
And I'm like, hey, at least for me, it was hard to learn from somebody who was 60 years old telling me all the steps they took from age 21 to 65.
Right.
It's a lot easier. Like I'm like, hey, I'll just tell you the next few steps. Right. I'm not going to tell you the whole route to the top of the mountain, but I'm going to tell you the next few steps of how to do this. And I had a brother. I'll tell you two stories that changed my life, and same advice I give my younger self. I was in college, and I met. We were at this speaking event. This guy came from Harvard, spoke, really impressive dude. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, that's a really great guy. And he gets off stage, he comes to the back of the room right where I'm standing. And I'm like, oh man, he's sitting right here. I can just chat with him. And somebody else was speaking, so I lean over to him. And I was so nervous at the time about risk, which everyone's always nervous about risk. Should I take a chance? I had this idea for a business I was gonna do. Should I take a chance? What if I ruined school? Because I had good grades. I was trying to do the internship thing and get a really good career. I actually got a 6-figure job offer out of college that I turned down. And anyways, I kept asking him, like, what should I do? He said, Bridger, what do you mean risk? I'm like, well, yeah, it's risky. I could go start a business. What if I fail? And he goes, Bridger, if you fail, do you have a family member or a friend that you could move in with and sleep on their couch for a couple months and maybe eat food out of their fridge and be with them? Like, honestly. And I said, well, yeah, I have parents or a brother-in-law or somebody, they would take me in. If I really needed it, they would take me in. So he goes, you're telling me if you fell flat on your face, you would move in with a family member or friend who loves you and has food for you, and you could have air conditioning or whatever in a house. Right. And I was like, well, yeah. Because Bridger, we're not talking about risk here.
He's like, you got no risk.
Your worst case scenario is better than 90% of the world lives today.
Love that.
We're not talking about risk here.
Yeah.
And he goes, and also, if you leave school or drop out, schools will always take your money. Right. You can always come back and pay them for a degree. They'll happily take your money for a degree. So if you have a good idea, go after it.
So you dropped out.
And I ended up dropping out of school because of that conversation. And another conversation I had with my brother-in-law, and he said a similar thing. He goes, Bridger, you're at a time in your life when you're young. You don't have a mortgage. You don't have 5 kids like you do. You don't have a car payment and all the stuff to handle. It's just you. How much do you survive on?
Literally no risk.
I'm like, I survive on like $500 a month.
Oh like, my gosh.
You could get a job at McDonald's and in a week you're making your monthly payments. Right. We're not talking about risk here. So you have a thing called asymmetrical risk. In investing, we call this, we've heard the term.
There's no downside.
Yeah, it's called high risk, high reward in investing. You've heard that, low risk, low reward. Asymmetrical risk is when you have relatively low risk, but yet very high reward. Right. That's what fund managers are trying to find alpha or asymmetrical risk. It's like, Bridger, you have that. Right. As a college student right now, you have relatively low downside, but if it does well, you have a massive upside. Yes. Why would you not take that bet on yourself in the best years of your life when you're healthy, you have tons of energy, you're young, and I was like, it's a great point.
I love that advice. I've tried to live by that pretty much any time I've looked at risk. Is like I analyze what is the potential downside, right? And if the downside is moving in with my in-laws, living in their basement or whatever it is, right? Like if that's really the worst case scenario, and I have never, ever taken action where it's ended up being my worst case scenario, ever. Like I've even gone bankrupt and it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, right? And so I think that's important for anybody to hear, that like the monster that you're creating in your mind of the downside of risk or whatever it is, it's not real. And you won't even begin to approach that. And even if you did, so what? Right?
Like, well, in America too, we have bankruptcy.
Right.
And these nets so catch much. We have like food stamps. We have it is hard to be homeless, in my opinion, in America.
Yes.
If you're really trying. Now, if you're on drugs or doing fentanyl and stuff, but let's just leave that out. If you don't avoid substance abuse, there's a lot of nets. If you live in the United States, there's a ton of nets that catch you. And it's asymmetrical risk.
I love it. So favorite book, what's something you're reading right now or something that you love to draw back on?
Few books that have changed my entire career. Yeah. We talked about Russell Brunson. I love Expert Secrets. That book absolutely changed my life.
Yep.
Launch by Jeff Walker.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you read that one. He's kind of an OG online marketer, and he talks through this process of launching products. And the reason I bring up those two books, they're very actionable books. I was young in my career in college, and I would read these books from bigwigs.
Right.
I'd read Jack Welch's book on how to do management, and it was so far away from me. Good to Great. I'd read that one, but like that's only applicable if when you have 200 employees. Right. I'm like, it's just me. Like, this book is cool. And I've actually gone back and read those books. I'm like, wow, these are phenomenal books. And at the time I was like, I didn't get anything from this book.
Same.
And so I like books when I talk on podcasts, books that are actionable. Yes. Launch, very actionable book.
Love it.
Talks about the process of launching any product or business you're doing. He talks it through this. He calls it the PLF style launch. This is what Apple, he goes, Apple's the best example of all time. Every year they do this with their iPhone. So what happens in May or June of every year? There's leaked images of the new iPhone. Oh, the iPhone, whatever, 17 or 20 or whatever is coming out. We have leaked photos. And it's like Apple's leaking these photos, right? They build this little hype. Then they build up a little bit more. This new feature maybe is coming out. They then set a date. You set a launch date.
Right.
You then have a big announcement launch date. You launch this thing. You then open cart on the launch. And then he's like, the only reason to open a cart is to close it. And you always set a close date. You close off the cart. Apple sometimes doesn't do that, but you close, like orders can only come in this time. Anyways, very actionable way to launch businesses and products. We do this still to this day. And we did that in college. I made $144,000 in a launch that we did just from doing that model.
So cool.
And I was like, holy crap. As a college kid,
I'm rich.
That could have been $1 billion. And it felt the same way. Like it was the same feeling of like, holy shoot, like we're freaking rich,
Yeah.
But I love that book. I'll say those two: Expert Secrets, Launch. And the last one I'll say is Lost and Founder. Have you heard that book?
I have. I haven't read it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Very phenomenal book. Talks about the real nuts and bolts of launching a business and being a founder. And this is the podcast, the Founder Podcast. Yeah. He shares an example of service-based business versus tech-based businesses. He goes, a tech company will typically get a 10 to a 12x multiple.
Yeah.
So let's say your company's doing 10 million revenue. Right. You'd get $100 million valuation. A service-based company is going to get a 2 to 3 maybe. So let's call it $10 million. Same revenue. A service-based company will sell for $25 to $30 million.
Right.
He goes, but the average founder ends up with about 11% equity at the end, a tech founder.
Right.
Of the end of their career.
Right.
So if you had a $100 million exit, that means the average founder ends up with $11 million.
Right.
The average service-based founder ends up with 50 to about 90% of their equity. So if you sold a service-based company for $30 million, you'd end up
actually better off.
15 to 20. And he's like, he calls it this myth of being a tech founder. Right. Sounds really cool. And he himself, the writer, he's like, he runs a multi-$100 million tech firm. The venture capitalists that have come in have locked his equity. He's worked on it for 11 years. He's like, on paper, I'm worth, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars. I get paid a salary of about $230,000 a year, and I've never been paid more than that. And I cannot sell my equity.
Oh my goodness.
And he goes, if I could go back, I would have structured things way differently. I would have. And anyways, if you're a founder listening to this podcast,
that's a fantastic, dude, appreciate the recommendation. So where's the best place to follow you? Instagram, YouTube, where at?
Instagram's awesome. Bridger_Pennington. YouTube, we have a channel that talks all about funds. So Bridger Pennington. We have a free course on funds too for people if they want to.
Cool. Yeah. Give us a nice hook here.
Yeah. We're trying to democratize Wall Street. So I'm like, we just give content because I want people to launch more funds and learn, at least not even launch, but just learn this game.
Yes.
So we have a totally free course on funds. Just message me on Instagram or fundlaunch.com. But it's 100% free. Just put in your email, and we have 20 to 30 videos that walk you through how funds work, how they're built. I just have this mission. We need more people to understand this game so that the BlackRocks of the world, the Vanguards, the Citadels, do not just run over us over the next 10, 20 years.
Dude, it's wild. Vanguard and BlackRock each have like a 15% stake in like every major business in the world. It's
unreal.
It is unreal, and I'm with you.
It's
I'm
very
with you
scary. And how they can move. And it's like, who controls the world? It's like, and BlackRock is essentially an extension of the Fed. The Fed does all their buying of their equities portfolio through BlackRock. And so, it's an extension of the Fed, essentially the U.S. government, that whatever agenda they want to push, they can push it right through those, groups. It's pretty interesting. They also run the Aladdin system. We can dive into deep finance if you want. The Aladdin system manages like 20 trillion a year. They do every transaction on Earth pretty much goes through the Aladdin system, which is ran by BlackRock. And so they can manipulate things like crazy. It's very interesting.
Oh my goodness. So man, I'm all about your mission. I think a lot of people that are listening to this podcast are either contemplating being founders, previous founders, had exits or whatnot, looking at launching funds or whatnot. I think there's a lot of value that you can offer to our audience. So I appreciate your time today.
No, thank you so much.
Go and follow Bridger. He's absolutely awesome. Until next time.